So, after the exotic review of the end-time Surah Lite, I want to return to the fundamentals, something classic. It's just a dynamic driver IEM this time, and for a time, on HeadFi and other audiophile circles of the early 2010s, it was basically the default recommendation for many people. Though due to its more limited distribution, it was somewhat harder to access. Yeah, it's still produced to this day though. I'm talking about the Zero Audio Carbo Tenore. But before I get into the review, I would appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's begin.
So once again, I don't really have a box to show you because I bought these IEMs secondhand. I gotta save money somehow, right? But you can look it up and see basically a very old-fashioned box that is made of cellophane. So there's lots of transparency and orange on the box. Truly, the packaging style kind of shows just how old this IEM is. Probably more than 10 years old by this point. Now, as for accessories, one of the things you were getting was some basic silicone ear tips, but I don't have those since, again, buying used and all that. But really, from the looks of it, you're not missing out on much. Now, what I do have is the included carrying pouch. It's average, maybe a bit below average. You know, the fabric kind of attracts lint. And it's it's pretty thin, but I guess at least it's something, right? Still not that great. It's a very old accessory after all, so I'm using this 100 yen carrying case that I bought from the local 100 yen store. It's actually quite nice, and you can store the Zero Audio Carbo Tenore in here pretty comfortably. So I'm sticking with this one. And speaking of, here are the Zero Audio Carbo Tenores themselves. As alluded to before, it is quite diminutively sized. So I have here my final E3000 for size comparison. As you can see, it's about the same size and length. So pretty much same form factor here. I guess the carbo part is represented by the if you can see that there's like a carbon fiber printing on the body of the housing here, and you've got Zero Audio as well as left and right indicators basically printed on top of the carbon fiber texture. It's a very stealthy look though, with just I guess a bit of pizzazz from the carbon fiber print. Now with the size and plastic housing, I don't know, maybe it's real carbon fiber, but not sure about that. It is a very light and basically comfortable IEM that goes into your ears with a multitude of ways. Basically, you can do a generic standard down the ear wearing style or an over ear wearing style. The small size means that you can do either a deep insertion with smaller ear tips, or you can just go with bigger ear tips and get a shallow insert. No problem, this thing will accommodate for those situations. Now, this cable, as you can see, is a lot like the final IEMs too. It's a very thin noodle strand, you know? It doesn't necessarily inspire confidence. But again, with how resilient my final E3000 has been over the years, I think this cable will probably do fine despite the fragile looks. Now, the headphone jack here. It's one of the most minimalist and low profile things I have ever seen. Like, just look at how thin the jack part is and how, like, the L shape is just not as pronounced as other jacks, right? I don't know how durable this will be, but it seems fine so far, and I quite like it actually. Now, as for other conveniences on this cable, you basically get an unimpressive but effective chin slider and Y split, and that's about it.
Thanks to its size, the Carbo Tenore does quite well for sleeping. It's small, it's light, it's low profile. You know, with cable, it doesn't tangle too easy. However, it's not as great as my top pick, which is the TRN CS3. Due to the length of the housing here, well, it kind of sticks out a little bit when you warn in your ear, and because of the way it's made, you know, when you plug it in, it's basically directly poking your eardrum, especially when you sleep to the side. But otherwise, still a very solid sleeping IEM. It's got good isolation too. Now, from my testing, the Carbo Tenore is able to play well with all the sources I have, be it something neutral to something warmer sounding. So you don't need to fuzz over source matching here. It'll work fine with everything. Though giving it some extra juice doesn't hurt, because if not, it might be a little quiet. As for tip rolling, my go-to for silicone tips will be the small size AET07s from Acoustic. Very comfortable, they help me achieve a deep fit. The texture on here, it's kind of matte and it works well on my ears. But if you like a foam tip recommendation, I recommend the Sony Triple Comfort ear tips. These are basically Sony hybrids with an outer layer that's sort of foam-like. I'm using the small size right now, and this one, it gets me even more isolation and a slightly deeper fit. Though, of course, a deeper fit means that there's a higher chance of wax buildup. So clean those ears, people. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into the sound of the Zero Audio Carbo Tenore. So going to the sound with the Zero Audio Carbo Tenore, you're getting a generally dark sound signature with an enveloping bass range and some choice boosts at the upper mid end with lower treble as well. It's actually got a roll off on like the top end of the treble, but an old tuning style, not really conforming to any like target signatures, but it is a non-fatiguing one, and it plays well with electronic genres. So let's start with the bass. Bass on the Carbo Tenore is a little eccentric. I'm going to pull up the graph courtesy of Critical and try to explain to you sort of how you will hear it as opposed to what the graph portrays, right? So you see here a good sub-bass focus boost here. It's a very wide boost, and it does give the sound some thickness. But actually, the slam factor that you actually hear is maybe minimal, possibly due to the small driver. And its bass texture, it's very soft, like veering to the point of like too soft even. The way the driver bottoms out as well, it's quite soft. It isn't like a 40 bass sort of distortion thing. It's just like a, you know, not sure how to explain, but I think that's the best I can take. But it is something you would expect, this soft bass texture, something you would expect out of a more mid-bass focused boost. At least it's what I tend to see on grass when I hear this. It's interesting, right? It's not like other big driver IEMs, but still, you know, when I hear other big driver IEMs, when they distort, it's very irritating. But here it's quite agreeable the way it bottoms out, right? That doesn't say that the bass is bad, however. The gradual slope down to the 500 Hz point, it warms up the sound and gives a sense of envelopment to the lower end of the frequency spectrum, making for quite a comfortable listening experience. I don't find the bass quantity to be necessarily lacking, but the quality is certainly showing its age here. Bass definition detail is not that great. Still, it is an enjoyable low end, and it's deceptively full sounding for just a micro driver setup. The mid-range on the Carbo Tenore is relaxed and it plays loose. with quite a warm lower mid-range to give itself a very relaxing presentation, but plays decently with most genres of music. Carbo Tenore is able to make a very smooth sound with not much shoutiness, glaring or gratiness. It's very nice for long listening sessions for sure. However, some significant trade-offs are made with vocal reproduction, with much of the body of both male and female vocals sounding a bit sucked out. Now, it generally kind of feels recessed with an off timbre, and with more growly voices, you don't get the bite out of them. Because of this, a lot of the details are smoothed out, and the sense of resolution is somewhat lost. Still, for the general vibe that the Carbo Tenore is trying to go for, I still think that this mid-range is competently done, though it's definitely a love or hate affair, especially if you're used to modern chiffre releases with more harmon-like upper mids, you know. For highs on the Carbo Tenore, they aren't much to talk about. It's somewhat rolled off, but not to the point of being dulled and muffled. It's just enough to keep that non-fatiguing signature going. In sacrificing some clarity, you get back a treble that's mostly resilient to sibilance and glaring sounds. Not much of a sense of air here, but thanks to the generally dark-leaning sound and the not too intense mids, you don't feel like the Carbo Tenore is blocked off, rather maybe just a little loose, so to speak. Perhaps thanks to the loose tuning, the Carbo Tenore maintains an above average soundstage width. A bit outside your head, I guess, though soundstage height is almost non-existent. Imaging is another weakness. It's showing the age of the hardware here. Musical elements just kind of pan left and right. They don't really go up and down or have like a sort of positional placement, not really. And they can sometimes sound even a bit like mushed together. Technicalities is again another shortcoming, with macro detail retrieval being just sufficient. A little bit less, and then the relaxed signature will have become basically muddy. Or I guess it would feel low fidelity, I'd say. Micro details aren't really present here. I think you'll find even modern entry level offerings, they'll have outdone the tenor in this department in extracting the nuances of music. By 2022 standards, the technical ability of the Carbo Tenore is alright, but it's definitely showing its age. So here's a relevant comparison to the Carbo Tenore. It's my old faithful Final E3000, 4 years old, and it's still going strong. In terms of build, I think the E3000 just edges out a little bit thanks to its metal shell, as opposed to the Carbo Tenore's, like, I guess I would say plastic, but the Carbo Tenore is not that far behind actually. Where the zero audio IEM is left in the dust is the accessories game. You just get a more refined packaging with 5 sizes of Final E ear tips, which are always a crowd pleaser, on the Final E3000, as well as some custom ear hooks for over-ear wearing, as opposed to the Carbo Tenore's comparatively barren inclusions. Now on the sound front, the Carbo Tenore and E3000, they have a lot in common, with some tuning decisions that set them apart. With both of these IEMs, you'll get a fairly relaxed sound, non-fatiguing signatures basically. But if the E3000 tries to achieve that warmth with romanticized mids, the Carbo Tenore, it goes dark for its execution. Now both of these have warm mids, right? But if the E3000 can be intoxicating, The tenor is a little more reserved. With the treble, I guess both wrote off whilst ensuring that some fidelity is maintained. If you primarily listen to songs with vocals, I would say if you want something more versatile for a wide variety of genres as well, I go for the E3 Fountain. Now, if you want something that you can play with electronic, trance, bass house, kind of ambient industrial genres, stuff with more instrumentals basically and less singing, yeah, I'd say the Carbo Tenore has more low-end energy to kind of handle that. It goes to show that whilst both of these IEMs, they have roughly aligning tuning directions, the tuning decisions can really change what they aim to achieve or what they end up achieving. Now, the Moondrop Chew, despite being, I guess, somewhat overshadowed by the recent storm of new Chi-Fi releases, it remains a very solid and still competitive IEM in the budget segment. In comparison with the Carbo Tenore, I think I prefer the Carbo Tenore's comfort over the Chew, but the Chew does one-up it in the housing material being metal. Cable-wise, I guess both aren't really the best, but I guess the Chew includes spring tips, which again, always a killer inclusion, and of course there's some anime packaging, which I quite like, which I guess puts it above the Carbo Tenore in terms of build and unboxing experience. Sound-wise, again, the Chew just wipes the floor with the Carbo Tenore in terms of like technical prowess. Even when it's just a $20 IEM, and discounting the spring tips is more like a $15 to $10 IEM. But yeah, you get a lot more detail and sort of imaging accuracy on the Chew compared to the Carbo Tenore. With the soundstage width probably being the element where I guess the Tenore matched or at least slightly edges out. On the tuning side, you get two contrasting signatures. The Chew's bass is leaner, whilst the Tenore's is encompassing. The Chew's mid-range is a lot more forward, portraying vocals in a much more flattering manner, even if at times becoming piercing. And its treble is a bit stylistically different from the Carbo Tenore's, being brighter with a bit more of a buzz to it. Now, based on technical ability alone, I think the Chew eats the Carbo Tenore for breakfast. But when you consider and you factor in the tuning differences, I think the Tenore still deserves some attention if you want something less intense with its upper mid-range, and you go for some generally darker sound signature. So it's not just a sort of historical curiosity piece, something that represents the old audiophile world. I think the Zero Audio Carbo Tenore shows that it's still got some mileage on it, even in 2022. Whilst the modern, highly competitive budget landscape has produced many IEMs which have outpaced the Carbo Tenore's technical ability, its tuning shows that you can veer off from Harman and still result in an addicting listening experience. Something, I guess, relaxed with a present but not overbearing bass. If you happen to be in Japan, or you are somehow able to grab it for cheap, the Carbo Tenore is a really discreet little IEM that definitely can still serve your listening needs, especially if your favorite music is leaning into like sort of electronic and ambient directions, or you just want to go for a long listening session with great isolation and little fatigue over time. This is the IEM for you. And with that, we've reached the end of yet another review. As always, I'll leave the links to the music I use in the description, as well as links to my website and my Patreon, where of course you can donate to me if you want me to get more gear in for review. There you go. Hopefully, I would hope that you're able to donate to me, but no pressure. Of course, thank you to all my patrons who make these productions possible. As you can see today, I'm wearing some kind of different clothing, jacket and all that, because it is getting colder in Japan. So gotta get this to keep warm, I guess. But yeah, of course, like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of content, as well as, I guess nowadays I do a lot of things, some gaming stuff, some vlogging, some shorts as well. And hit the bell button so that the videos actually get delivered to your feed. If you have any suggestions, any questions, anything you want to share, please drop it in the comments below. But otherwise, if nothing else, I am Lumerion, and thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next video. This is Lumerion, signing out.